Welcome everyone for our discussion on Kalamana, measurement of time. Dharmawiki is a unified knowledge source platform to present traditional viewpoint of Sanatan Dharma, available in the rich and diverse research heritage of Bharat. It's an open platform to build narratives, learn, contribute, discuss and reflect. So today we are going to discuss on this concept of Kalamana. What is an interesting principle of Kalamana is, Kala has two aspects. Now certainly Kala cannot be translated as time because it has a different connotation. So Kala in the Sanatan Dharma, it is not simply a mathematical measuring thing. Kala also represents the divine principle, and also in some tradition of Sanatan Dharma, Kala is also personification. So there are two aspects, the destructive, Samhara Shakti, and the productive and Srijana Shakti. So they are integrated, they are not isolated. So therefore, what we see, that Supreme Brahman is all pervading as Kala. Therefore, our rishis said, Jivana Bhadrani Pashyati. That is the Veda Drishti. When we see, oh, everything is getting destroyed, that is a human Drishti, that is a human perspective. But when they say, no, actually Kala is also bringing new growth. In the Bhagavad Gita, in the 11th chapter, when Arjuna was quite fascinated to see the Vishwarup Darshan, he asked this question to Krishna, who are you? What was about you? So what did Bhagavan say? He said, Kalosmi lokakshaya krita pravruddho, lokan samharatam iha pravritta. Time I am the great destroyer of the worlds, and I have come here to destroy all people. He didn't stop there, because that might sound that he is only a destructive part. But instead he also said, Ritepi tvamna bhavishyanti sarve ye vastitau prattanikeshu yodhau. He said, other than you, Pandavas, everyone. So here, as much as destruction is happening, it is also giving rise to new construction. Therefore, Sanatan Dharma, the time factor is not linear. It is a circular. So we have today also Nishala. She is a student of Sanskrit, part of the Yagya of this Dharmawiki platform. So since she is also studying, so we'll discuss about this. So Nishala ji, what do you think about the difference between Kala, as I briefly explained, and the time which is spoken by the modern Western theologians? What is the difference between the two?
Govindji, namaste. I have put together a few aspects about time and Kala and the differences between them. Here we see, as you have just mentioned, Kala is divine, one thing, and it is cyclical. That is, we have the system of repeating yugas and mahayugas and kalpas, all those things. Whereas the other connotations of time doesn't have this aspect, which is one of the important factors. Then it's a Prachina Shastra. So we have Ganita and Jyotisha base for it, where we have lots of calculations for time, the distance, the mean motion of the planets, the distance between the planets, calculation of sunrises, moonrises, etc., eclipses, Vishwat, etc. And it is a Sahaja Jnana for us. For us, it is an inherent knowledge because it is primarily based on like who determined. Our Shastras mentioned that it is the Desha and Kala are the intrinsic knowledge, or they're the basic science or the biological clock which is inherent in us. It's a circadian rhythm. So even an animal, a migratory bird, knows where to go when the seasons change. And similarly, the exact time when when we have this Sharad Rutu, and when do the leaves of a tree fall, all these things are inbuilt and natural. So nature is our pramana. We have deities for them, like Brahma's day is called Kalpa. And what is the purpose of having all these things? Like, why is it like, why does the aspect of divineness helping us in what way? In what is it in which way is it helping us? For us, it's an educational value saying that time is precious. We regulate all our actions based on good or bad time. And it is also important to note that this time or kala that we have is ancient. We have it from the Vedic time, ever since the oldest texts have been given out. So Vedanga Jyotisha is one of the important astronomical texts. Whereas if we see time, it has no divine aspect over there. So we don't have that value for it. Like it's just another physical factor. Then, as I said, and as you had repeated, it was just a linear factor for them. So it goes on in the number of years. They don't have something called yugas and kalpas and all that thing. And they do not recognize that sahaja jnana, that inherent knowledge is not combined with nature. So time and nature don't correlate for them. They may have something like, if we look up the Wikipedia, they have something called Saturn or Chronos, and all these things will come up in the literature. But what is the educational value? What are they teaching us? When we say Mahakala, we have an internal fear that because there is a divine aspect to it, somebody is watching over us, we should regulate our behavior and attitude. So we have identified 6 seasons, and they just have 4 of them. And we have identified the nakshatras and their roles even in the Vedic times, whereas the rest of the world recognizes only the zodiac signs. For us, the zodiac sign is further divided based on the nakshatras. So then I would say this is how Kala and time are different. So
interesting, very interesting principle what you discussed about. The difference between one of the core point is the organic naturality, sahajakta. I remember talking to some fishermen and farmers. They have the precise knowledge, may not be speaking in the shastric way, but the impact is the same. It is inbuilt system for them. Therefore, the classical presentation and the folk tradition both reach to the same goal. The classical tradition presents, the dharmic shastric presentation is very mathematical, but it is not isolated with the sahajakta. I think that's a very beautiful
hand in
difference
hand, yes.
time and kala. So therefore, there are some objections raised by people. Now I'll come to the next question that as you mentioned this, so what is the difference between the Bharatiya Panchanga and the Western daily calendar which we use? I'll add this third question into that only. One of the objection is raised by the modern educated Indians and others that why this knowledge Panchanga is so complex to understand as against the calendar what we study. What is your take on as you are studying the whole knowledge of time factor?
It's a good thing, Govindji, that this aspect is touched upon. I can say I have just summarized them here, where we can see how is Panchanga different from the Gregorian calendar. We are right now using the Gregorian calendar. Prior to this, we had Julian calendar. We had Augustus putting in his version, and then everything finalized, and then came into. Or it's a common Christian calendar. They primarily differ in the very nature of the estimation of time. For us, the Tithi, Vara, Nakshatra, Yoga, and Karana, which are in the Panchanga, are constituted, I mean, they are under the lunisolar or the solar calendar systems. Whereas a Gregorian calendar is totally a tropical solar calendar system. So, I mean, without going into extensive discussion about what a tropical calendar is, we can say that a tithi or calculation of a tithi, which is which is the lunar day, and the Gregorian calendar goes by the day, week, month, and year. And we have the Panchanga that we are using has evolved over thousands of years of observation and combining different knowledge systems, and it is nature centric. Whereas the Gregorian calendar it's come up only about some 600 years ago, when Julius Caesar introduced the leap years, and then Augustus readjusted the calendar to honor himself and added August having as 31 days. And so February had 28 days. So things like this which changed based on people. So Pope Gregory of Roman Catholic Church, he added 10 days on October 4th, 1582. And so the next day was called as October 15th. So why, how, and what was the reason for doing it? I mean, even though there is the tropical solar calendar adjustment over there, it's still based arbitrarily. So that is the one more main difference. So for them, this day starts at midnight, Christmas Eve or New Year. So what is the pramana in the nature? That is the primarily difference between our Panchanga. If we say Panchanga Chaitra Shukla Pratipad, then we know the season has changed and it's a spring season that has come up for us. So, but they don't have that. It's in the midnight. What is the difference in the sky? That is the difference between these two systems. And we have like 9 measurements of time, wherein you can see, I mean, all these are compiled into the Kalamana article on Dharmawiki. And it has macroscopic and microscopic time calculations. Like the Brahma, Divya, Pitra, Prajapati are all macroscopic time scales. And Bruhaspati, Barhaspatya is used to calculate the Shashti Abdi or the 60th celebration, 60-year celebrations of a person. The Surya, Savanamana, Chandramana, these are all what we use in the daily system. So if we see 1 Sauradina is the movement of the sun in a Rashi by 1 degree. So things like this which we have evolved, like what is a Tithi, how much is the Savanadina, what is the Nakshatra Dina. So when we see this, it doesn't show us any kind of complexity, because all these are established and they are well known. We generally consider 1 Savanadina as a sunrise and a sunset, the time period between 2 consecutive sunrises. So when we use this calendar, a simple person, as you said, it's not at all complex, and a simple person can easily understand how to use this system of measurement. So as you said, a fisherman knows when not to and when to venture into the sea. He can track all the lunar movements. And so also a farmer knows when to sow. He calculates the nakshatras. So that's how all this system has developed, rather than just astronomical calculations. It was actually a whole system of the Yuga systems which developed, which made it easier for the common man also to follow the Panchanga.
So it's a very interesting again, even though it may sound complex. I remember talking to a Jyotish Shastragya. He was mentioning that how it begins with a apparently very concrete, just like when I describe a person, like we immediately recognize based upon their shape, their form, their recognition. But as you go deeper inside their system, their mind, their intelligence, their ahankara, their entire internal body system, it becomes more and more complex. As you said, even this kind of terminology, people, when they had not gone to school, even the villager could speak about these months, these realities of different names very naturally, because they may not be educated, they may not be literate in regards to knowing the akshara, but they were literate in regards to knowing the terminology based upon their connection to the entire ecosystem. Now, because we are separated from that ecosystem and we are forced to study this Western calendar, and therefore we have lost the knowledge of the Shastra and we have lost the knowledge of common sense, as we were discussing, that how time or Kalamana was very integrated and very integral to everybody's life. It is like breathing only. Just not being connected to Panchanga is not the problem of the Panchanga. It is problem that we have stopped breathing because we started getting into artificial breathing, like going into the Western model, which is nowhere connected to our system. Even for the farmers. In fact, my understanding also very interesting. Previously, the farmers would see the sky and astronomy and plant. Now they're seeing the market and planting, and therefore they have to go through all this problem of suicide,
Exactly.
loan waivers, just because I would say very much disconnected to the concept of nature and time factor. Therefore, Nishalaji, what working on this platform of Dharmawiki, so how do you connect people to read it and implement into their day-to-day life? Because we see that, I give the example of farmers, day-to-day life, how do they basically get it? Can you share some thought on this Dharmawiki platform and its connection to the article of Kalamana?
Here on Dharmawiki, our aim is to integrate the traditional knowledge with the modern day knowledge. Like, it is important that we have all the technical knowledge or the developing sciences per se. But it is also important to integrate both of them, keeping our traditional knowledge together along with the modern knowledge, I think would be a very good source. So we don't lose our natural connect and yet implement something good from the modern systems that have already been shared in the world by different scientists. So in the Kalamana, actually there are 9 measurements of time. As I said previously, the Surya Siddhanta is such an old traditional text, and we had this knowledge then itself, and they had clearly outlined how many kinds of measurements of time are there. What are the instruments of time measurement? In those days itself, they had very good instrumental setup also, which is now seen even in our Jantar Mantar or places where the observatories have been set up by previous Rajas and Maharajas who had this knowledge well developed. And it was simple knowledge actually. Regarding the Kalamana and the Surya Siddhanta text, in our article in the Dharmawiki, we have come up with all the 9 measurements of time, the Sauramana, Savanmana. Here we can see the Kalamana article, which I have summarized. I have summarized that article's a few points, which includes what is the parimana for the Sauradina, how many, what is the movement of the sun in the Rashi by 1 degree makes up a Sauramana. Sauradina, and 1 TD, how is it calculated? Movement of the moon by 12 degrees, and 1 Savanadina is equal to 24 days, 24 hours. 1 Nakshatra Dina is a little less than 24 hours. So what is the purpose of having all these things? The Sauradina is used to determine Uttarayana, Dakshinayana, equinoxes, solstices, that is the Vishuats, and the Sankrantis. And we have Savana days are used to determine the time to perform yajnas. And it's also used to determine the Asaucha or the Sutaka due to birth and death. So that is important, and it is integrated with our traditional practices. All these aspects can be found in the Kalamanam, as per Sanskrit word. All the interested readers can look up this article on Dharmawiki.
Thank you, Nishalaji, for coming and discussing about this. We hope people, our viewers will see this, read this article, and are inspired to study Panchanga and see for themselves the contrast between the two. the utility between the two, and the growth in regards to the circular growth. Therefore, for the followers of Sanatan Dharma, time is, Kala is eternal. And therefore, at the same time, Kala is eternal. That should not make us lazy, because Kala is also connected to Muhurta. If you miss that Muhurta, you miss many things. There is the harmony between the moment and eternality. No? So we are supposed to be alert, at the same time not hopeless. The eternality gives us the concept of hope, and Muhurta gives us the concept of alertness. So those who study Panchanga and those who study this Kalamana, as Nishchalaji spoke and compiled this, the entire concept of Kalamana. So we request all the viewers to come and see the articles on Dharmawiki, and especially the concept of Kalamana. Thank you very much.